Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Megan, in case you're new here. Um, Today I have a transmission for you, and I call it a transmission because the idea is that we learn as humans, we learn through experience, we learn through embodiment. We don't learn through intellectual understanding or intellectual pursuits necessarily. So my intention that I set when I'm giving a transmission is that whatever codes, whatever knowledge, whatever wisdom that I'm channeling through me from higher realm dimensions, that it will be transferred, transmitted to you through embodiment, through experiential understanding versus intellectual, right? That's why I call it transmission, in case I've never explained that. And as those of you that know me well know, I just start talking and that's me just channeling. That's what's already happening. So here we are. Okay, so the last video that I shared to my YouTube may be something that you've already seen. If not, I think that this transmission is going to build upon that. So it might be something you want to check out first. You don't have to. It's always what's aligned for you. But I believe that this will most likely be building upon that. So I'm going to start with the concept of self-love, which I did talk a bit about in that transmission. And what I spoke about was this idea that self-love is not just loving the good parts of yourself. It's not just loving the things that you do really well, your skills, if you will, or your positive qualities and traits. It is loving all of it, right? It is loving when you are showing up in a way that is not loving. It's still loving yourself through that. And in fact, when you can love yourself through that, and I'm going to talk about what that looks like and what that means in just a second, but when you can love yourself through that, you bypass shame, you bypass guilt, you bypass all of the quote unquote negative energies and how they show up as an energy reader. The way that I see those energies show up in people is it shows up as devil energy. Okay, if you're familiar with the tarot, the devil energy, right? It doesn't mean that person is a devil. And in fact, the devil is an energy, right? It's an energy that can be merged with a entity. So it can become kind of like a being, if you will, but it starts off as an energy. And so when you love yourself, when you truly, truly accept and love yourself, you eradicate all of those lower frequency devil energies. Okay. So how do you love yourself? Taking responsibility is an act of self-love. Being radically truthful and honest with yourself is an act of self-love. Being in the pursuit of truth and honesty with yourself and with others is self-love. Discernment is self-love. All of these things. So I'll give you an example. Oh, you know what? I may have to come in and come out because my mic is about to die. I'm glad it gave me a warning. So let me share this first, and then I will take a pause and come back. And you guys won't even know the difference. Okay. So for an example, if you just had an experience where you showed up less than your higher self, or you didn't show up in a way that you were proud of, when you really, really love yourself, you're able to face that. You're able to look at it. You're able to call that out from the dark little shadowy depths and the compartmentalization in your mind, and you hold it. You hold it in presence. You give it your attention. You don't try to fix it. You don't try to squirm out of it. You don't try to spiritual bypass it. You don't try and tell yourself a more pleasant story. You don't try and make yourself feel good in the moment of facing that part of you that you didn't necessarily like. That's true love. It's true unconditional love. It's true acceptance because you're holding all of yourself. And that automatically transmutes the lower energies and moves you out of it. So you say you're sorry, you get honest, you take accountability, you are embodying responsibility. You recognize that behavior or that trait or that thing, and you say, I'd like to improve upon this, and I'm going to be honest with myself. What most people do is they try and fix it. Especially, this is what a lot of spiritual teachings try and teach, is you want to get out of that less than feeling good feeling. So an unhealthy way to do that is to numb out, right? Substances, TV, sex, you name it, like whatever things that people reach for, constantly trying to shift their emotional state, shift what they're naturally already in. True spiritual development and work is being in what you're in and allowing it to be okay. Being in it with full acceptance. That is a way to show yourself true self-love. Okay. It's not squirming out. It's not trying to fix. It's not trying to alter. It's not trying to change. It's not trying to shift. It's just being in it. And through that presence, that is what allows that energy to evolve and shift. It's not through fixing, right? It's not through changing. It's because that in and of itself says you're not good enough as you are in that moment, that you are not worthy of love, you are not acceptable, that you are not perfect as you are in that moment. So what that does is that creates a devil energy within you. That creates shadow that you haven't faced. And it's, if you're someone that's very triggerable, what I mean is somebody could say something to you and all of a sudden you're like beside yourself and you don't even know. Maybe you hide it and you don't tell the person that they triggered you, but you were triggered. It means that you have a lot of blind spots, because triggers are just blind spots, right? But if you don't have very many blind spots and somebody could say, you know, you're an alcoholic, and you could be like, you know what? Yeah, I have struggled with alcohol. It's not a blind spot to me. I'm actively facing that shadow. I'm actively working through that shadow. So that doesn't trigger me, right? You're just giving information. You're just saying something that I've actually looked at. So it's not so scary. It's not so soul rattling. So that's a good way to know that you are really loving yourself fully, is that you accept all aspects, all parts of you. And you also, therefore, in the same vein, know that it is not you, that your struggles with alcohol, I'm using an example, was not you, right? It was all the conditionality placed upon you, all the things you thought you had to be, all the programming, all the conditioning. And as you face it, as you look at it, you transmute it. You start to move out of those states of consciousness, okay? You start to evolve. I am back. I had to fix my sound. It was really funny because it was adding this like intensity to the channeling and the pressure, because I could see this little light on my device blinking, like it's going to run out of battery. It's going to run out of battery. And I was like, I just want to get the thought out. It was not very fun. It was not very chill. Let's say that. But to be honest, it's so appropriate. Like, I don't believe in coincidences. Everything is exactly what we're asking for. And it feels like there's a weight to this message. There's a weight to this transmission. It feels so potent. It feels so important for us to really be owning this truth right now. I'm recording this smack dab in the middle of an eclipse season, right? And we're also in a Mercury retrograde. I think Pluto retrograde just started. So there's a lot of powerful astrology at this time that's really supporting us in doing this inner work and really getting real with ourselves. We're creating a new timeline. We are being given the opportunity to choose to come out of entrapment, to come out of enslavement, to be free, to be sovereign. And what that truly means, a lot of it has to do with love, right? Because you see on the devil card, these humans that are entrapped in the karmic wheel, entrapped in the illusion, the delusion, all of that. We are getting this really beautiful opportunity at this time to step out of that, which is why these messages have been coming through. And there's more that I've been sharing in the Patreon community. So if you're interested in more support and guidance and group kind of lives and get-togethers to really support each other on these journeys, that is all available there. The link is down below. I also just want to say thank you so much for your support here. I know I'm scattered and I show up here and then I don't show up for months and then I show up. And so those of you that have stuck with me and have been here on this channel and been supportive and liked and subscribed and commented, it means so much. And I literally do this work only for you. That's the only reason I do it. And I'm completely supported by you. And with all of the interesting energies on these social media websites, there's a lot of kind of, let's call it infiltration and things that occur. So the support goes a very long way. And I just want you to know that. So please like, please share, please comment, please subscribe. It means a lot. So self-love. Self-love is taking responsibility. Self-love is being honest with ourselves. And it is through that process that we become free, that we emancipate ourselves from entrapment, that it's the path to our salvation. And what we've been talking about a lot lately is the subtleties of this, how it doesn't always look like, stealing, right? Or hurting somebody physically or cheating somebody. It can be so subtle. And I'll give an example. I'll use myself as an example here. I recently released a transmission to the Patreon community where I was channeling. And as I was channeling, I heard a phrase, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. And with the context of what I was channeling, it felt very harsh. Like it felt so cruel, like intense, right? And I was like, I can't say that. My ego was like, no, I'm not going to say that to them. And I just kind of dismissed it, kept channeling it, because I heard it very clearly that I do have clear audience. So the way that I know I'm channeling is I'm not thinking before speaking. I'm just opening my mouth and being like, okay, what comes out, right? Some of you are probably familiar with it. You probably do it naturally without even realizing you're doing it. And so that's always the intention I set before coming on and doing a transmission or speaking. Like, I may have an idea of what I'm going to say, but a lot of times I have no idea what I'm going to say. They just let me know through all the signals within my body and my system, you need to hit record and see what happens, right? And I'm typically really good at just saying what comes through, but I put a block, I put a limit on that. And immediately, once I was complete with the channeling and I came back to the present moment and I was out of that kind of dimension of channeling, I felt bad. Like, I felt so bad. And I had a conversation with my guides about it. And I was just kind of like, was that like, what just happened? Like, why did I say no to you? Like, was that me being in the light? You know, was that me like being smart enough to read the room? Or was that me going against you? And they were like, you went against us because you were afraid, because you had a fear that you were going to trigger somebody, you were going to hurt somebody. But that was you trying to be in charge. That was you thinking that you know more. That was your ego. Like, it was my ego. It was my ego being afraid to trigger, being afraid to hurt somebody. And the thing was, it was like, I was doing a disservice to the people that I was channeling for, because I was holding back truth from them. I wasn't being honest with them. And that's why I felt bad, because I've made this commitment. I actively choose every single day, every moment of every day. Sometimes I have to be choosing all the time, meaning like I'm having a hard time staying in the highest timeline. And so I'm just getting opportunity after opportunity to keep choosing the highest timeline, to keep choosing truth, to keep choosing the spiritual path, to keep choosing it, right? Sometimes it's harder than others. Some days it's harder than others. And that's why I felt bad, because I've set this for myself. And so my guides and my higher self assist me and help me in letting me know when I'm not that, when I'm out of alignment with that, when I am kind of violating that in a way, right? And that they bring it to me in something that feels bad. Now, if somebody was in a bit of spiritual bypass and not being honest with themselves, they may have that experience of, this feels bad in my body, something they did. Maybe they ate a meal that like didn't sit well in their body, or they hung out with the person and after they were done hanging out, they just felt really worse than they did when they first started hanging out with the person. Like, you name it, there's so many different things. Or maybe they lied, you know, they weren't, maybe they lied to themselves. Maybe they said something and then acted in another way. Any way that they were out of harmony within themselves and within what they say, aligning to their truth. And then they feel bad. And instead of taking accountability and responsibility, they shove it down, right? They go, okay, I don't want to look at that. Like, that doesn't feel good. That's kind of painful. It's okay, I'll be better next time. And in that quick moving into the future, they bypass. And it's so subtle, right? It's so subtle. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's not about labeling good bad. It's not about shame either, because self-love is the antithesis to shame. It's not the same. They're like totally different, right? But in that kind of sweeping it under the rug type of energy, it builds up over time and it becomes this. And people can feel that, whether they can label it, whether they know they're intuitive or tapped into energy or not, they start to feel this in you. And then what happens is you start to link up to other people like this, because you become a vibrational frequency match to them, right? You're not a frequency match to somebody that's, I don't have temperance here, but yeah, somebody that's really in their truth. Because someone who's really in their truth is going to feel really uncomfortable being around someone who's not in their truth, because they're going to be like, I know I could say anything right now and it could be the wrong thing and they could be triggered and then there could be this whole thing. So they just don't feel safe, right? And you may not even know why you feel safe, but that's why. So these are the dynamics, right? The second that we feel like the not good feeling and we feel a little bit out of alignment, our job is to love ourselves in that moment. And loving ourselves looks like taking responsibility and taking ownership. So I'll tell you what I did. You know, I had that experience. My guides, you know, affirmed, yep, you didn't feel good because you were out of alignment with what you say you want. You say you want to hold this community up. You want to be in truth. You want to be a mirror. You want to be a clean mirror for them. You want to love them through their truth, through their freedom, through their sovereignty. And that's what you're actively choosing for yourself. And you just held back truth that we gave you we always have your back. We're never going to throw you to the wolves. We're never going to have you say something that's going to cause somebody like a break, a psychotic break. You know what I mean? Because I think that's part of the fear. The fear was, am I going to hurt somebody so bad that they can't heal themselves out? Like, is it going to trigger somebody so much that it's like too much, right? The divine always has the wisdom on this. It's not up to you to try and micromanage. You're only going to be getting involved in having to like, you're going to be making it worse than you are going to be making it better, even if your intentions sometimes you think are pure, right? So when you're really truly aligned to your highest timeline, you're going to feel it in your body, or however it works for you, your own guidance system, right? Maybe it's a physical sensation that you start to feel and you're like, oh God, I'm out of alignment. Take accountability, take responsibility. So when I posted the transmission to my Patreon, I included kind of a channeled written message about everything I'm saying here to you all. And I included that, and I asked everyone that viewed the video if they would take the time to just read what happened. And it was just a beautiful lesson, a lesson through me that the divine used of like how subtle it can be. Because was I an asshole when I decided not to say that? No, I was actually trying to be a good guy. I was trying to protect people. I thought I was protecting them. I thought I was being kind. I thought I was, being nice. Just because, always a bridesmaid, never a bride is like it is connected to the matrix, right? It's so stereotypical. It's so icky. It has a lot of icky energy on it, and I don't like it. But the divine knew better than I that was going to be a direct activation for somebody watching, that was going to be their path to salvation. That was the exact thing I needed to say for them to go, oh, this is about me, or this is, you know what I mean? Like, who am I to judge? Who am I to know who the message is for? As a channel, that's not my job. My job is to simply get out of my own freaking way, get my ego out of the way so that I can be a beacon of light, so that I can shine the light. And anytime I succumb to that fear and that micromanaging and that control, it's me holding this energy. And when I can get honest and be honest with myself, allow the not feeling good feelings to permeate, to just hold space, to be in them, to be okay with them, that's directly banishing this energy. It's trumping this energy because it's moving into angel energy, right? I wish I had the temperance card handy, but oh, wow. I literally, you guys, it just fell out. I love when that happens. I love it. I love it so much. It just fell out, you guys. I'm honestly that, like, if you had been here and you'd seen that, you'd be like, whoa, that's so cool. That's so freaking cool. It's like we are getting so close to being able to like move things with our minds, you guys. And I'm sure some people are already practicing this type of thing, but like we're so close. Like we're so close to being able to like, oh, it's so cool. Anyways, okay, let me get back to the channel. Okay, I think that's, let me see. Okay. Okay, so that was a big chunk of what I wanted to say, and there's kind of an addendum, another piece, right? And in addition to, so when you're on this journey of trying to understand your truth or the truth, and you're trying to figure it out, I think that maybe some of us have misunderstandings about how this process works. Some of us kind of are under the illusion that it's going to fall into our lap. So like truth could be an action step you need to take, right? It could be a kismet sort of, oh, I really want to like talk to this person, I want to hang out with this person, but I'm going to let the divine bring them to me. Like we're just going to like cross paths or whatever, anything like that. Or like, I want a new job, or I want to move houses, or I don't know, you name it, whatever the thing is. And you kind of just expect, like, you're like, okay, I'm setting my intention, I'm putting in my order, and you just kind of expect that it's going to align and it's going to come to you. And it's not that that's not true, but we're talking in really like subtlety here. We're talking in specifics and we're talking in subtlety. There's a bit of a misconception because I forget what that quote is, where it's like you have to take a couple steps and then the divine will come in, right? It's like you have to take action and then the divine will come in and support that action. That's essentially what I'm trying to get at, is it's like you can't just live your life doing whatever you want to do, whether it's in alignment for you or not, expecting that if you're doing something wrong, the divine's going to let you know, right? Because we've been taught that kind of patriarchal idea of God, that it's like if you're doing something wrong, if you hurt somebody, if you kill somebody, then you're going to have immediate karma. That's not true. It's not actually how it works, right? And it's why we do see so much pain and suffering just horrible things happening on this plane, is there are certain souls that have been on this path to service to self, where they've realized, oh, I can kill somebody and get away with it. Service to self, because that's a very that is a allowed path on this planet, right? You can be in service to self, you can be in service to others. Really, really extreme polarities here. And the service to self path is actually harder, believe it or not. It's actually a lot harder to completely rid yourself of all humanity, of all empathy, of all compassion. But that is what they're working on. That's what they're doing, because they realize that the universe supports that. It supports the polarity. So what happens is a lot of people that are actually on a service to others path will fall prey to the service to self choices, because they're expecting, well, if it was wrong, somebody would come in and tell me, the divine would tell me, there'd be a tower or something bad would happen to me, and I would like, and like, while that can happen, things like that can happen, right? Someone can get like a terminal illness, or they lose a family member or somebody, and it really wakes them up, and then they're like back on their kind of chosen path of service to others, whatever. It happens, but it doesn't always happen, especially when we're talking about subtleties, when we're talking about the specifics of someone who believes themselves to be on a spiritual journey, a spiritual path, but is getting very confused in all of these dynamics, right? So because that service to self path is supported, we have to get really, really clear. And so when you're looking for truth, when you're looking for the answers, when you're asking for the truth, you can't just passively sit back and wait for it to arrive on your doorstep, or expect that if you're doing something wrong, that they're going to come in and shake you. This is why divine timing moves, right? It's why divine timing is mutable, because it's on a date on the calendar, because it's directly related to your vibration, your frequency, and what you're owning about yourself and where you're at. Okay. So once you are ready for that truth or that opportunity or that choice, and you align to it, and this is through your spiritual work, right? It's everything I talked about at the beginning of this video, that self-love, that ownership, taking accountability, taking responsibility, being in a space of presence, I'm going to call it. And I'm specifically using the word presence versus surrender, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But when you're in a state of presence, you are allowing, you are open, you are receiving, and you are realigning when you need to. When you take a left turn and you don't like where that led you, you take responsibility, you take ownership, and you get back aligned, right? That's the spiritual path. That's the spiritual work. It's what I was talking about when I'm like actively having to choose all the time what timeline I want to be on. And sometimes it's so much easier to choose a lower timeline. It's so much easier, right? But then once it starts to feel really bad and it doesn't feel good anymore, that's what kicks your ass and gets you right back on, right? So we're in this process. That is when spirit will reveal truth. That's when the divine, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, will reveal a truth to you from that deep state of presence and allowance. It cannot reveal the truth or the answer you seek or the step you're supposed to take. It can't reveal that guidance when you are really busy in movement, when you are not surrendered, when you are not present, when you are distracted, when you are spiritual bypassing, when you are in anxiety, when you're in fear, when you're reaching, right? I talk about that a lot in the Patreon community. It's like, when we don't like what we're in, we try and fix it. We try and change it. I call that reaching. We're reaching for like a lifeboat. We're reaching for something to just help us feel better. Like, I just want to feel good. I just want to feel better. So we're reaching. What can I get? What can I grab? What can I grab? Right? And sometimes it is as innocent and sweet as like, oh, let me call my mom. You know, I just need someone that loves me and is going to tell me how great I am. But maybe the truth of that moment is you need to sit with how great you don't feel. Like how great is not accessible right now. You just need to sit and be in like, I feel like shit. I feel like a garbage person. I'm not proud of myself. I'm not proud of my actions. I don't like any of the things I did. And if I were to call mom, and I'm using mom as an example, but if I were to call mom and she would be like, oh, it's okay. I love you. You're the best. You're my favorite child, or whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean? Whatever they say. And then it makes you go, okay, but that's a little bit of masking. It's a little bit of dishonesty. It's spiritual bypass. So if you're in all those dynamics, and however they show up, for some of you, it's just staying really freaking busy. It's never being alone with yourself. It's never being quiet, never getting stillness, right? For some of you, it's staying in the higher realms and never grounding into your body. So you skip out on exercise and things like that, or you just are constantly like up in the higher kind of realms, tuning out. There's so many different ways that we're so creative as human beings. We are so freaking creative. So we can find 1,000,001 different ways to do this, right? And some of them are really fun. And a lot of people can spend their whole lives doing these. They can spend lifetimes doing these things, right? And that's okay. There's no judgment. God doesn't judge you. There's no judgment in it. It is what it is. You're learning, right? But when we're actively these people that are tuned into this video, I'm sure, and tuning into videos like this, we're on a spiritual path, we're on a spiritual journey, and we're actively saying to God or the divine or our higher self, the universe, please show me the way, show me the truth. I want to know, I want to grow, I want to expand, I want to evolve. But then we're sitting back being like, okay, I'll just sit around and wait, and I'll just live my life how I live my life. Like, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to expect it to come, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be present with myself. I'm not going to have discipline. I'm not going to, whatever. It's not going to work. It doesn't work, and the truth will never arrive. So you'll constantly be having to seek the truth, and you can try this truth on for size, and maybe that doesn't work. You can try this teacher on for size, maybe that doesn't work. You can tell yourself you're a twin flame, maybe that doesn't work. You can be like, I'm not a twin flame, I'm actually here for a soulmate, maybe that doesn't work. You can try on all these different sizes of things looking for this truth, right? But the truth arrives. The truth will always arrive and be a vibrational match to you when you are in this state of presence, when you are in this state of surrender, when you are in a state of wholeness. And that comes through that discipline. It comes through responsibility, through self-love, right? Through accountability, taking ownership, loving yourself, no matter what. And you'll know that you're doing this when you start to notice how much more loving you can be to your fellow man, right? How much more loving you are to Earth, to Gaia. You know, do you pick up litter even if it's not yours? You know, like, are you killing a bug in your house because you're impatient, or are you taking the time to go release it? You know, you encroached on its habitat, not the other way around, right? Like, just different ways of how you show up more loving in your day to day. That's how you know you're extending more love to yourself. And so truth then arrives. And what's beautiful is once that truth arrives, and by the way, it doesn't arrive from your guides. It doesn't arrive necessarily. It's not necessarily like the divine plopping this present in your lap and they're like, here you go, you've earned it, because we don't live in a society, or sorry, we don't live in a universe of rewards and punishments. That's the patriarchy. That's the old version of God, right? That's the, no offense, that's the biblical God. That's the like Abraham, and like that's like all that shit, right? I was trying so hard to not curse in this video and it just happened, but that's that old version. We're stepping into a new timeline. We're creating a new version. You don't want to take that version with you. It's disempowering and it keeps us all here. The irony is that God, it, you know, causes you to fear the devil, but it literally is the devil. Okay. Anyways, I'm sure some of you will understand that, and there may be an outlier or two that might get really offended and triggered by that, and that's okay. I'm okay with being that for people if it's necessary. Okay, so the truth arrives. It's not this like present, it's not this like delivery from God. It is you aligning to it. You being a vibrational frequency match to the truth. And then the magic happens. Then the beauty starts to happen. Then it's really fun, because then, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this patterns, pattern. Then the divine affirms it for you over and over and over again. Now that you've aligned to this truth, and you may not feel 100% like, yes, this is the truth. You may feel like, oh, wow. And you may feel it physically in your body. You may feel vibrations. You may feel something that lets you know this is new. This is something I need to pay attention to. And what I always do is I test it. I like to test the truth. I'm a little scientist. I like to test the truth. So what I'll do is when a truth arrives, I'll feel it in my body and I'll hold it, and I'll just hold it and see what happens with it. And if it is truly, truly the truth, that's when I ask my guides, my higher self, the divine, to affirm it, to confirm it, to show me examples of how it's true, to show me over and over again, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? And that's when those synchronicities will come. That's when the signs, that's when people will come into your life and just like, you know, you'll be at the coffee shop and they'll just say a sentence, which was the direct thing. Maybe you're like, oh, should I move to Paris? And they're like, start talking to you about how wonderful Paris is this time of year. That's what I mean. It's like these confirmations, these affirmations, they start to flood in because you've been open and in a state of presence and surrender to allow the truth to arrive. and you've still been diligent, you haven't been passive, you haven't just been like sitting back with your feet up being like, okay, spirit, do it for me, right? You haven't been a victim. You haven't been a dependent on the universe, on your guides. Some people worry, am I too dependent on my guides? It's like, well, I don't know. Are you taking action? Are you in ownership? Do you take responsibility? And it doesn't have to look like 3D action though, by the way. I want to say that. It doesn't have to be like, oh, are you taking action? Like, are you going on the job boards every day to look for a job? Because when you're working in multidimensionality, you don't have to do that stuff anymore. It's a game, and you can decide to play a different game. You can play a new game if you want to. You don't even have to go look for jobs in the old model, right? You can be in a new model. But what I mean by the taking action is it's like responsibility, self-love, energetic cleanliness, vibration. Are you clean, right? So all that stuff, right? So after it arrives, universe will start affirming it, confirming it. And it's so liberating and affirming when that happens. It just feels so good. And it may even been a truth that was like, oof, I hope I'm wrong, right? When you were testing it, when you were kind of trying it on for size, you were hoping maybe you were wrong. And unfortunately you were right. But the reason you'll know it's right and you'll know that it's correct and it's the 100% truth, it's so aligned, is because when you get the affirmation, the confirmation, the burden will be lifted, the weight will be lifted. You'll be like, oh, okay, it's true. Even though I don't like what I'm hearing necessarily, or my ego doesn't like it because it means I'm going to have to make changes, I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to do that. But that burden is going to be lifted and you're going to be like, oh, yes, okay. Yeah, right? And that's the magic. That's the support. That's that quote that I can't think of where it's like you take a couple steps and the universe will come in and support you tenfold. That's the support. The support is like, yes, you've located the truth, you're aligned to it, and I'm going to help you move mountains in your life to make sure that everything is aligned to that, right? Now, if you're testing a truth and it comes in and you don't ever get all of those confirmations and affirmations, that's okay. That's part of the process. And you can notice that through, like, do you feel like the burden was released? No. Do you not necessarily feel like the burden was released? Okay. And then you just go start the process back over again. You continue with your practice, whatever your spiritual practice is. You continue with your responsibility. You continue with the self-love. You continue with allowing, right? Being in presence. And I'll talk about surrender and presence in just a moment. I haven't forgotten. And you allow a new truth to arrive. And then you test that one, right? And you get affirmations. Do you feel the burden lifted? Do you feel like a weight off your chest? Do you feel like, oh, it all makes sense now? It's all connecting. All the dots are connecting now. You do? Great. Now you can move forward, right? And you're constantly going to be doing that. And that's honestly what I'm describing is also a bit of divine neutrality, right? It's not getting too attached to something, because let's say that a truth arrives and instead of waiting for the universe to confirm and affirm it, you just immediately attach to this truth. Once you're in that attachment, guess what you're not in? You're not in allowance. You're not in surrender. You're not in presence, because you've already attached to this timeline that you haven't quite tested out yet. You've attached to it, and now it's clouding everything. So guess what? Now you have a bunch more blind spots. Now you have a bunch more potential triggers. So let's say you've attached to this timeline that you're going to move to Paris, right? And you're attached, but you haven't necessarily had all the affirmations yet. Maybe you've had a couple, right? Because the divine will give you encouragement, like, yeah, you're on the right track, keep going, right? So you might this is where people get confused with synchronicities and signs, and they get really in their head, like, oh my God, how do I know if it's true? Because they did tell me this, but they didn't tell me this, right? So you'll get a couple, but then let's just, in this scenario, let's give an example. So then you go to talk to a family member, right? Maybe someone in your life that, like, you really can trust. They love you, they care about you, they're like very honest with you, and they're kind of like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't know if I see you there. I don't know if I feel, and like, if you've attached to this idea that you're going, you're triggered. You're like, oh, no, don't say that, and depending on how you are with this relationship with this person, you could actively disagree and get in kind of an argument or whatever, or depending on how you are with whatever, you could mask it and hide it and just be like, I'm never going to talk to that person again, or like, I'm not going to, oh, they just don't know, that's a trigger when you're attached and you're shutting down, right? So you can kind of notice if you're in attachment based on how often you're getting triggered. If you're in attachment, you're going to be getting triggered quite a bit, most likely, because the universe is just trying to show you that. They're just trying to give you the information to help you. That's all it is, right? They're not trying to make your life hard so that you're constantly in a state of being triggered. They're literally just trying to show it to you to help you so that you're like, oh, thank you. Now I know I'm in attachment. Let me go figure out where I'm in attachment, right? Okay, I hope I explained that well. So you test it. Either you get those affirmations over and over again, you feel the burden, the weight lifted, and you go, oh, even if it's like let's say you were really excited to move to Paris and that's kind of how you hoped it should be, but you get those affirmations and confirmations that you're not supposed to move to Paris, and that's when you feel the weight released and you're like, oh, okay. So even though I don't get to do the thing that I really wanted, for whatever reason I thought I wanted, I'm gonna allow spirit to fill in the blanks. I'm gonna allow spirit to come in and show me what's truly aligned for me, right? I'm open, I'm willing, I'm open to see and hear and feel truth. Okay, show me. Okay. And you're still loving yourself through all of that. You're loving yourself through that whole process. Okay, let me explain the difference, because this is something that's new to me. I want to say this. This is something that Spirit's been, I think I've used the word surrender so often in a lot of my transmissions when I've actually meant to differentiate between surrender and presence. I just want to say that. So let me do my best to kind of explain this new information that's been coming through for me. Because I think surrender, the idea with surrender is like, it's okay, right? It's like, surrender kind of comes at the end of a cycle where you're not really given any movement forward. You're not given many choices or options, and you don't really have many action steps. And therefore, all you can do is surrender. And the opposite of surrender is going into a lot of meaningless action, a lot of meaningless movement. So that's kind of the differences in the polarities, right? Is like surrender is just being like, okay, I'm just going to sit still. I'm just going to like take a nap. I'm just going to let this go for now, right? Maybe I'm pretty upset or hurt about something that happened, and I'm not gonna be able to solve it right now. I don't have all the information right now. I can't have a conversation with this person right now because they're busy. You know, I can't do any, so I'm just gonna surrender. That's kind of, I think, energetically what's arising for me with surrender. Now, a lot of times in spiritual practices or in spiritual journeys, we're asked to surrender. We're told to surrender. But there's a difference between surrender and presence. Presence is allowing, right? Presence is being okay with what is, not judging it, and being in it. Sometimes presence and surrender go together. So you're in an active state of surrender and presence. But sometimes you're just in a state of presence and you cannot access surrender, and that's okay. That's what's emerging, is that presence and surrender can go hand in hand, but sometimes you can be in presence and not in surrender. So what would that look like? That would look like, let's say your life just blew up. Okay. Let's say that there's just like all these things going on, you know, family, friends, job, house, money, like it's all just blowing up and it's not going well, and you're not stoked, and you are not stoked at all about it. And you could stay in this heightened emotional state of kind of like freaking out and moving and trying to like fix everything. And but you could also just get present to what is and allow it and be like, okay, but you don't have to like it. Presence doesn't mean that you have to like it and you have to be like, okay, I'm going to surrender. This is good. Because I think with surrender, it's almost like we're like, well, I guess it's in the word. We're acknowledging this is good. This is what I need. This is, you know, I need to take a nap, or I don't have any steps to take right now, and that's okay. I'm just going to be okay with it. Whereas sometimes we just can't access that. And when we try to access surrender and it's not true, it's actually a state of deception. It's like a lying to ourselves, right? It's a spiritual bypassing, which is like, it's like your life is falling apart, everything's blown up, like, and you're like, I like this. That's not honest. It's just not truthful. Like when we tell ourselves it's fine, that's so bypassy, right? So we don't want to do that. And so when we're on this journey of trying to come to the truth, and it's a really difficult journey, and we're so confused and we don't know what the truth is, and we're just lost in the sauce, right? Sometimes you may not be able to access surrender, and that's okay. All you need to be able to access is allowing what is, just being with what is. Notice I didn't say being okay with what is, because to me that implies surrender. Sometimes you can't be okay with what is. You can't access it, and that's okay. Don't try, don't force yourself, don't seek, don't push, don't try to get to this thing, this different state of consciousness that's just not truthful to you. It's just not authentic. It's not authentic to be in a state of surrender when you aren't in a state of surrender, and that's okay. I hope this is making sense. And I think I could be, this is just something Spirit's been showing me. And so for some of you, that because words are so personal, right? Our connotations with words are Yeah. So for you, maybe this isn't an issue and you're going to go back to using surrender and presence interchangeably, and that's totally fine. But I was guided to explain this just because I've used surrender and presence so much throughout this transmission, and I will probably continue to do so in future transmissions. So I just wanted to clarify this. There can be a difference. And I think that's a really, I want to say this too, it's a really hard thing to do. It's extremely hard to be in a state of presence when things are not going well, when you're not enjoying your experience, whatever that means for you. There's so many different versions of that, right? When you're not enjoying it. But the thing is when you can get into a state not of enjoying it, not being like, yay, I'm so glad my car's getting towed, and I'm so glad there was a fire in my house yesterday. Woo! Yes, spirit, thank you, right? No one's asking you to get there. No one's asking you to get there, okay? But when you can access that state of presence, just observing what's going on from the witness, from the watcher, which I guess I should say here, that is a lot of what I mean with presence and holding space, is it's acknowledging your multidimensionality. It's acknowledging all parts of you. It's acknowledging your higher self. It's acknowledging your human, your ego, your inner child, your people-pleasing self. It's acknowledging all parts of you and just letting them all be, allowing all of them, right? Because they're probably all very triggered when shit hits the fan. When things like that happen, 111, when things like that happen in life, it's impossible to not be feeling all of those different versions of you, right? So when you can access presence and just be in that state, you can just notice it all. You just notice it all. And that is the state that the truth can arrive in. That's when you can become a vibrational frequency match to it. You don't necessarily have to be in surrender to arrive at truth, because sometimes surrender is not accessible. Oh, okay, that was a lot. Spirit's been on fire today, so I think I'm going to end it there. Let me just review my notes really quickly to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, I guess I didn't touch on stillness. And that doesn't have to mean physically, but it very often can mean physically. So getting quiet, getting alone, even just for a moment, because so many of us are so empathic and so sensitive, whether we know it or not. We're taking in from everyone around us. So when life is blowing up and things feel really confusing, just carving out, as much time as possible, but if it's only 5 minutes that you can carve out to be in solitude, to be in stillness, that's going to help you arrive at that truth, arrive at the presence. Nature is your best friend for this, right? Being in nature, connecting to your body through things like meditation, like breath work, like movement, right? But if you are one of those ex-athletes like myself, or somebody who has that perfectionism when it comes to physical body stuff, perfectionism, right? Really strongly, it may not be a good idea to do those physical exercises that you're going to be in that attached perfectionism mind, right? I find that a lot with people that were really good at something or was a professional at something at one point that was a physical thing. It's like when you're in these states, you let's say you really like to push yourself, and that's great on any other day. But when you're in a moment like this, it's actually best to pull back. And if you normally would do a really hard, hour-long vinyasa class, you need to do a yin class. You need to just do the yin, girl or boy. Or go on a walk, not a run. Do you know what I mean? Whatever. I don't know. I'm kind of calling myself out, but I'm also I'm sure that people will be able to relate to that as well. So, but if you're somebody, here's another fun one that's coming up. If you're someone that's really good at letting yourself off the hook, then maybe you do need to do that hard class. If you're someone that's I can't do that, I'm not good enough, I need to do the beginner class, maybe now is the perfect time to push yourself and to see what that brings, right? It's all about knowing ourselves and knowing where we're at on these scales. And we're going to be in different parts of the scale at different times in our life, right? So part of being in truth, part of being in ownership and knowing thyself, that is the greatest power we have, right? I use that example a lot with money energetics. And after I say this, I'm going to wrap it up because I know I'm getting on tangents. But with money energetics, are you a person that likes to really spend money and you find yourself not being able to hold on to money, not being able to save? And are you a person who is constantly running out of money, but you seem to make a lot of money, but you're I never seem to have money? You're probably someone that needs to work on not spending money, right? You need to save. You need to not go buy that latte, or whatever it is. But on the flip, if you're somebody that is always like, I never have any money, I don't have the money, oh, I can't afford that, I can't do that, and you're constantly holding on and hoarding money, like from a scarcity dynamic perspective, anyone that has ancestors and family that have been through like wars and famines, you might be more on this side, just so you know. The hoarding, then you need to go spend. You need to take a leap of faith, and you need to trust, and you need to, and I'm not saying just go crazy and buy stupid crap. No, I'm saying like be in like what would really make your soul sing, right? Would buying a yoga package make your soul sing, right? Would eating a really good, yummy meal make you feel really good, you know, whatever it is. Or when's the last time you bought yourself like new clothes, and making sure it's aligned, of course. But anyway, so this is just part of these dynamics of like, we're not all the same. It's not a one size fits all, but it is the same energetics. We're all working through the same energetics. We just might be on different sides of the polarity. Some of us might be a little bit more neutral. So we might be more in a union state, right? And that's great. And some of us might feel really good for a while, and then we get out of whack and on an extreme. But that's why this whole process that this transmission was about, and the intention of it is talking about the process of how do we arrive at truth? How do we align? How do we know? Right? How do we come into knowing, which is really powerful? Okay. Without getting attached. Okay. That's it. That's all I got. I'm sending you guys a lot of love. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. I'd love to hear thoughts and what if you feel comfortable to share, because I do understand being on a public space like this, sometimes sharing is not, I never comment on public things. So I totally get that. So supporting in other ways, donations, joining the Patreon, liking, all of that is very, very appreciated. And I also love to hear how you guys feel about it. And that's why the Patreon's so rewarding, because everyone feels very free to share and comment and whatnot. So if that's something you're craving, more community, then that's available for you. But otherwise, thank you for being here. Lots of love. I'll be back whenever I'm back.